It is 7:33 p.m. on Tuesday, March 10th, 2026. Good evening. My name is Christian Klein. I'm the chair of the Arlington Zoning Board of Appeals, and I'm calling this meeting of the board to order. First, I'd like to confirm that all members and anticipated officials are present. So the members of the Zoning Board of Appeals, we have Patrick Hanlon. Patrick is here. I see you're on mute, waving. Venkat Holly.
Here.
Have you. Adam LeBlanc.
Here.
Good to have you with us. Brad Barnowski, our associate.
Here.
Good to have you with us. And Nicholas Rosenberg, also our associate.
Here.
Have you with us. Mr. DuPont is unable to join us this evening. On behalf of the town, we have Colleen Ralston, our clerk and zoning assistant.
Here.
Good to have you with us as well. And then checking in on the dockets this evening for docket 3873, 125 Broadway, we have John Leone.
Oh, yes, I'm here.
Oh, good to have you with us.
Thank
And
you.
for docket 3892, 468 Mystic Street, we have Mary Winstanley O'Connor.
I'm here, Mr. Chairman.
Good to have you with us as well.
Thank you.
So tonight's meeting of the Arlington Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted remotely, consistent with the bill signed by Governor Healy on March 28, 2025, which extended temporary provisions pertaining to the open meeting law to June 30th, 2027. The extension of these provisions allows public bodies to hold their meetings remotely by providing live, adequate alternative means of public access to the deliberations. This meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast by ACMi. Members of the public who are participating via Zoom and who wish to offer public comment should be aware that they will be asked to provide their full name and address so that a complete public record of the meeting can be taken in accordance with state law. All participants of this meeting are advised that people may be listening to the meeting without offering public comment, and those people will not be required to identify themselves. Any votes that are taken at this evening will be conducted by roll call vote. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. As chair, I reserve the right to take items out of order in the interest of promoting an orderly meeting. As the board will be taking up new business at this meeting, as chair, I make the following land acknowledgement. Whereas the Zoning Board of Appeals for the town of Arlington, Massachusetts discusses and arbitrates the use of land in Arlington, formerly known as Menotomy, an Algonquin word meaning swift waters, the board hereby acknowledges that the town of Arlington is located on the ancestral lands of the Massachusetts tribe, the tribe of indigenous peoples from whom the colony, province, and commonwealth have taken their names. We pay our respects to the ancestral bloodline of the Massachusetts tribe and to their descendants who still inhabit historic Massachusetts territories today. At the prior meeting, I had made a public notice. I'm just going to repeat it again tonight, and then it will just appear on our website. So last December, the board was made aware that an applicant had received an email claiming to be from the Department of Planning and Community Development, itemizing additional reviews that were required and including an invoice for additional fees. The applicant is told to wire money to an undisclosed account or their application could not proceed. That we learned last time of a second occurrence. The demand included specific information about the application, included an invoice demanding payment in order for the application to proceed. These are not coming from the town. These emails are trying to impersonate a communication from the town. They are phishing attacks. It appears the culprits are accessing the public records for upcoming hearings and using that information to make their emails appear more official, and they are not. The fees that applicants will be charged are listed on the board's website. The fee for all applications before the Zoning Board of Appeals, with the exception of comprehensive permit applications, is $400. That payment is made directly to the town. There will not be any additional fees imposed or required. If you receive or have received an email purporting to be from the town requesting that you pay more money, please bring it to the attention of Colleen Ralston, our administrator. You should also make the police department aware of the email. We are distressed that someone is trying to take advantage of applicants before the Zoning Board of Appeals. We hope that making this announcement will help bring this scam to the public's attention. The board will be considering how to add a warning to our documentation, notifying future applicants to be wary. In the meantime, please be vigilant in your review of unexpected emails and always contact the board if you have questions or concerns. So with that, I'll move on to our posted agenda. So starting with the administrative items, these items relate to the operation of the board and as such will generally be conducted without input from the general public. The board will not take up any new business on any prior hearings, nor will there be the introduction of any new information on matters previously brought before the board. So item one is the vote for the approval of the meeting minutes from February 24th. These are minutes that were prepared by Ms. Ralston, distributed to the board for questions and comments, and final version posted back to the board. Are there any additional questions or comments from the board in regards to the meetings from February 24th? Seeing none, I move the Zoning Board of Appeals for the Town of Arlington approve the minutes from the February 24th, 2026 meeting of the board. Mr. Hanlon is seconding. So vote of those present. Unfortunately, Mr. Dupont is not with us tonight. Mr. Hanlon,
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc,
Yes.
Mr. Baranowski,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes, the minutes are approved. That brings us to item 2 on our agenda. Vote on the decision for 307 Washington Street. This is a decision that was written by the chair, distributed to the board for questions and comments. Final version posted back to the board. Are there any additional questions or comments in relation to the written decision in 307 Washington Street? Seeing none, I will move that the Zoning Board of Appeals for the Town of Arlington approve and adopt the written decision in docket 3880, 307 Washington Street, which grants a special permit for an essential services use in the R1 zoning district under section 5.4.3 in the zoning bylaw. And if I could have a second from among Mr. LeBlanc and Mr. Baranowski and Mr. Rosenberg.
Second.
Okay. With that, a roll call vote of the members. Mr. Dupont is not with us tonight. Mr. LeBlanc,
Yes.
Mr. Baranowski,
Yes.
Mr. Rosenberg,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. That decision is approved. That brings us to item 3 on our agenda, approval of the decision in docket 3889, 73 Edgerton Road. This is a decision that was written by Mr. Baranowski, distributed to the, I believe that was yours, wasn't it? Not?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Distribute the board for questions and comments. Final version posted back to the board. Are there any additional questions or comments in relation to the written decision in docket 3889, 73 Edgerton Road? Seeing none, I move that the Zoning Board of Appeals for the Town of Arlington approve and adopt the written decision in docket 3889, 73 Edgerton Road, which grants a special permit for a home occupation under section 591 in the zoning bylaw.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hanlon. So roll call vote. Those present at the hearing, Mr. Hanlon,
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc,
Yes.
Mr. Baranowski.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. That is approved. That brings us to item 4 on our agenda, vote on the decision in docket 3890, 172 Overlook Road. This is a decision that was written, Mr. Hanlon, I believe, wrote. No, not you.
That was Mr. LeBlanc, I believe.
Mr. LeBlanc wrote this. Thank you so much. Apologize. Written by Mr. LeBlanc, distributed to the board for questions and comments. Final version posted back to the board. Are there any additional questions or comments in relation to the written decision in docket 3890, 172 Overlook Road? Seeing none, I will move that the Zoning Board of Appeals for the Town of Arlington approve and adopt the written decision in docket 3890, 172 Overlook Road, which grants a special permit for an extension of a non-conforming side yard setback under sections 311 and 811 and 813B in the zoning bylaw.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. LeBlanc. Roll call vote of the board. Mr. Hanlon,
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc,
Yes.
Mr. Baranowski.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. That is approved. So that concludes the administrative portion of our meeting. So then moving on to the public hearings section. Before opening tonight's meeting for public hearings, here's some ground rules for clear and effective conduct of tonight's business. After I announce each agenda item, I will ask the applicant to introduce themselves and to make their presentation to the board. I will then request members of the board ask what questions they have on the proposal. After the board's questions have been answered, I will open the meeting for public comment. At the conclusion of public comment, the board will deliberate and vote to either continue or close the public hearing. All votes will be conducted by roll call vote. The final vote on any matter before the board will be taken at a subsequent meeting once the written decision has been drafted and provided to the board. After the decision has been adopted and signed, the decision will be filed with the town clerk, starting the 20-day appeal period under state law. After that time, the applicant may proceed with their building permit. However, under state law, no decision granted by this board shall take effect until a certified copy of the final decision has been filed with and recorded at the Middlesex South Registry of Deeds in Cambridge by the applicant. So with that, brings us to item 5 on our agenda, which is docket 3873, 125 Broadway. And so I will recognize Mr. Leone and ask him to bring the board up to speed on where they are.
Good evening. I have been working with Mr. Hanlon a little bit, trying to come up with a definition of an inspection bay that worked for both of us. We weren't able to come to agreement on that. We had different ideas as to what an inspection bay is and what it should entail. And I saw his definition of it, and frankly, it's too restrictive in our opinion as to the time frames and what can and cannot be done within that inspection bay. In the meantime, though, I see that it was uploaded to the board's, the town's website, the minutes of the 1991 town meeting, Article 5, excuse me.
Yeah.
The article, it was Article 5, service station debate. And I think that reading through that, particularly on lines 38, page 38, lines 14 and 17, 41, and page 42, lines 1 and 2, it bolsters our position as a bay is a door. And if you wish, and that's further bolstered by the 1993 2009 Zoning Board of Appeal decision. So Mr. Faulkner, who was the head of the ARB at that point, said service bays refer to the place in the garage where you drive the car in and then it goes up on the list, not the gas station islands. There was debate whether or not it was a bay, the gas station island or not. And then on page 41, at lines 8 through 12, Mr. Candora, precinct 13, asked the same kind of question. I'm curious, when you say as a service bay, are you referring to where you get gas pumped, or are they actually the garage facilities? Mr. Faulkner at line 21 through 24 said service bays refer to the part of the service station with the doors on it, where you drive the car in and it goes up on the left. The next page, that's a bay. That's a service bay. So there was a definite discussion during the town meeting as to what a lift was and of what a service bay was. I take that reading of the town meeting minutes to say the service bay is the door that contains the area with the lifts in it where the work is done. And that is bolstered, I believe, by the 1993 decision, 1993 decision on docket 2903, where they refer to it being a two-bay station, meaning the two doors where you drive in to get a lift. And taking those two items, which I think answer the board's question, what was town meeting thinking back then? And in my opinion, the grandfather issues for the 1993, we have a two-bay garage right now and two-bay service station, and we want to add a third bay, which is the one around the side of the building, which we've referenced in the past. So I don't think we have to jump through hoops and call the left-hand bay where Mr. Cooley does the inspections an inspection bay, and frankly, almost relegate it to subusable status just so he can build another bay with another lift. And I think that doing so would not be in the best interest of the town nor its citizens. If we go back to that 1991 decision, they talk about how in 1971 there were 20 gas stations. In 1991 they were down to 10. And now today, I was counting on my fingers, I think we're around 8 or 9. So this is a business that is decreasing in the town. And what Mr. Cooley wants to do is to help the citizens and do a great benefit to the citizens of the town so they can get their cars serviced locally. You want your car serviced before you go on 4th of July vacation, you bring it up, he checks it, makes sure it's safe, changes your oil. If he has a bay with a lift in it that he's not able to use because it's an inspection bay, that person's going to have to wait until another bay and the lifts within that bay are free. What he wants to do is be able to use all of his lifts in a normal business-like manner. These lifts cost about $10,000 each, I believe, is the purchase cost. And then to install them is an additional cost. So to literally enforce the bylaw the way the board had been thinking, I think is a extreme hardship upon the citizens of the town as well as the business owner. And frankly, we want to be nice to our business owners and our citizens. So that's why we just think that the board can easily approve this with the 3 bay provisions under the definition and of the bylaw provision allowing 3 bays in the service station. Otherwise, I would gladly continue to tell you the same thing, but I don't want to waste the board's time. But as it is, I'd like to hear from the board.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Mr. Hanlon.
So, Mr. Loney, can you point to any place in the minutes of the town meeting where anyone talks about more than one lift behind a door?
No, they didn't discuss that. They said, and I'll go back and read it.
No, that's enough. The question I have for you now is, isn't it true that your position is that if there is one door and 2 lifts behind it, you still have only one bay, that the 2 lifts together are only one bay? Isn't that your position?
No, my position is a bay is the area behind the door that can contain a lift. It can contain 2 lifts. Lifts does not equate to bay. A bay is the area behind the door, and that is almost verbatim from the 1991 minutes.
Let me just focus again.
Yes.
If there's anything in there that meant it was, just think about what might be important to us in deciding this.
Yeah, I've been
I
trying
do
to think
care
about
a little
that.
bit about how many bays are there, and I'm looking for something that says that the way in which town meeting dealt with a door is that if you had more than lifts behind it, that was still only one service area, even though you were serving on 2 different cars and on 2 different lifts. Is there anything is there anything that says that in these minutes? And if so, just tell me where they are.
Oh, I can't prove a negative, Mr. Hanlon.
Well, yes, you can. If there was something in there that said it, you could. All right. If the answer is no, you can't find it.
You're asking me a loaded question. All I'm doing is going in and referring to the actual words in the minute. Service bay refers to the place in the garage where you drive the car in. And it goes up on a lift.
A lift.
A lift.
That's not helping me.
It doesn't say the lift. It doesn't say multiple lifts. It says a lift.
A lift.
Which is ambiguous in itself, and it could mean 2 lifts.
But maybe that's not the same anymore. Is there any other place that you could point to that would address my concern? I think it's important how many lifts. I just want to know whether there's a fact in here, something to look at that addressed my concern.
Mr. Leone?
There's nowhere in there where they discuss the number of lifts in relation to the bay.
Okay.
That is true. There's nowhere they discuss that at all.
Okay.
So I think the number of lift is a canard.
Well,
thank you, Mr. Leone.
You're entitled to think that. Mr. Chairman, I have some other questions, but not necessarily to Mr. Leone.
Okay.
That go to this. And I wonder if Mr. Okuni could answer this. Okuli, when did you or your family acquire this gas station?
Mr. Alcoholi?
Eli? You're muted. Eli, can you unmute and tell us when you bought the station?
We bought it in 2008.
And who did you buy it from?
Mr. Tom Porter.
Mr. Porter. Do you know, I take it that as from your testimony last, or maybe it was your son's testimony last time, that there were the three lifts, the configuration that currently exists,
Yes.
with the configuration that existed at that time, and you haven't changed it since then. Is that right?
No, we didn't touch the building. We didn't do anything besides just replacing the roof, put a new roof, and
Okay.
clean it up and paint it inside.
Now, Mr. Porter has owned that station for a long time. He owned it back in 1993, and he ran it for some time before that. Do you know whether at any point he added a lift?
I had no idea. The only time I got engaged and involved with Mr. Porter when he approached me if I want to buy the property, and he wanted to retire. And he wanted to retire. That was in 2008.
Okay. So do we, in terms of a lift is a pretty expensive thing, I think, as Mr. Leone just pointed out. And you have, however many, you have the three lifts that you have. Do you have any indication as to how old they all are, or whether they were all put in at the same time or different
No.
times, just in
No.
terms of depreciation or anything like that? So we don't
No.
really, so would it be fair to say that we can't be sure from the fact that nothing changed after 2008, that nothing changed between 1993 and 2008? Is that fair to say?
Nothing's been changed.
Okay.
All we did change the gas pump, dress it up with our image,
Yes.
and paint and replace the roof and paint it.
No, I
And
understand.
paint,
There was
paint the garage.
there's a lot of stuff in the record that you did a good job on that, and I think that's correct, and nobody is really doubting that.
I appreciate it, and I will continue doing that.
And the plan that you have now, I think everybody agrees is a great plan, and it's going to improve the aesthetics. If you do it, it will be improve the aesthetics of the garage a lot and be an amenity to the neighborhood. I think that most of us, maybe all of us, agree to that. So if you turn to the decision in 1993, the writer of that decision starts off saying the 125 Broadway real estate currently exists. Now, this is as of 93, as a permitted use in accordance with the provisions of 6.05 of Section 504 of the Table of Use Regulations of the Arlington zoning bylaw. And that's found on page 7. And then the writer of that opinion helps us by repeating what the definition is of a gasoline filling station site under the bylaw. And it says that someone can, with the permission of the Zoning Board of Appeals, for the retail sale of gasoline, oil, auto accessories, minor automotive repairs, and a number of other things. But it never says anything about a service bay. The things that if you were in 1993 applying for permission to maintain a gas station, what has the actual regulation in it, the definition of a service bay is not there. There's no limitation on the number of service bays that you can have. So let me just turn back now to 1991, what Mr. Leone has been referring to. And it does come up in the very parts that he points us to, why it is, or whether it is, that you have, what the significance is of having two different provisions. And so he says, where do you look for, and this is on page 43 lines, say 8 to 14. He says, where do you look for the service-based business? And that's in the definition section, which Mr. Faulkner says is explanatory. It's explanatory. It's not operational. It's not operative. The operative part is the part of the bylaw that you find in the use table. And I just read you what that one said and didn't say anything at all about service base. And it doesn't refer back to the definition that's in the definition section. It doesn't use any of the words that were used in the definition section. So as of 1993, when the Board of Zoning Appeals takes this up, there was no limitation on, because there was no operative language in the zoning bylaw having to do with service base. That didn't exist then. But it does exist today. And it exists today because if you look at the use table, it includes the words auto service station, and that is what's actually defined in the bylaw. So now the explanatory part and the definitional part are, the operative part are put together. So Mr. Porter had his station, and Mr. Okuli has acquired the station. And we assume, because the board did, and because I think it's fair to say that the permission that would be sort of equivalent of a special permit is the 1972 variance. I'm willing to sort of assume that that is the permission that you need. All this time that they have that permission from 1972 as it's been modified, and there is no requirement that limits the number of bays until at some point, and we don't know exactly where that point is. It certainly is after 2018, because that's when the zoning bylaw was recodified and put into its current form. It might have been before that, but until that point, there was never a limitation on the number of service bays that Mr. Okuli could have in this gas station. But now there is. And the question I have, and I'd like to basically put this to the board, and especially the people like Mr. Rosenberg who've done work in this area. If you have a situation where you have a special permit that says you can do, that says you can do something, that a given thing is a permitted use, and you have that for a number of years, and the permit never says that it will expire at any point, and it can't even be challenged because you've had it for such a long time that the statute of limitations has run, and then the zoning bylaw is changed to no longer permit the use that is permitted under your special permit, right? Because maybe, of course, Mr. Leone is right and that the numbers work out, but no matter how you look at it, there's a regulatory thing that springs into existence when they recodify, or somehow when they put the service bay limitation into the operative part of the bylaw. What happens? Can you keep operating under the old special permit, and the new special permit only applies to new uses or extensions or something like that? Are you now suddenly in a prior non-conforming use? Do you suddenly have to go and get an amendment of your special permit in order to legitimate in order to deal with the new restriction? What is the rule on that? Because one way of looking at the situation that existed here is that Mr. Porter and Mr. Okuli were always in compliance until at some point the definition was made operational that forbid an extra surface bay, and suddenly your special permit was for a use that under the bylaw was no longer permitted but had been permitted. What's the usual, for now, forgetting this case necessarily and the facts of this case and the ins and outs of one thing or another, in general, what happens when you have a special permit and then the law is changed so that the special permit is authorized as something that's no longer allowed? It's a question, the answer to which I'd like to know, because it might.
It's grandfathered.
They have the seeds for a different way of getting to yes in this case.
It's a grandfathered use, Pat. It's if you granted a special permit to somebody and then you change the law later on, you were grandfathered in. The town cannot willy-nilly just wipe out people's special permits and impact their property value in that fashion. So, I'm going to take a little bit of exception to your findings regarding the 2009 decision of this board right there on page 3 under findings of fact. These are the facts the board found then. The subject property contains 2 bays. And
Mr. Leone,
the
you
operative
have said
part,
that so
the
many
operative
times, and we
part,
agree that it
you're
says.
arguing about, may I let you speak? The operative part of that you're arguing about, when was the definition of 3 bays and 2 bays regarding a service station? That's what the 1991 town meeting did. Right there on page 2 of the minutes that the board itself put up, they were changing 2 service bays to 3 service bays. So it was defined in 1991 what a service bay was. It has nothing to do with the lifts inside that bay. And I think you're stuck on that fact. And I apologize
I know
for
I am
saying
stuck
so.
on that, but Mr. Leone
Leone?
asked this before, said that he wasn't going to waste our time. And it's not that he's wasting our time, it's just that almost word for word what he's saying now is what he said 20 minutes ago. And
Exactly.
I wonder if Mr.
Leone, please
Leone
pause.
appreciates that what I'm trying to do here is to develop an alternative pathway to say yes.
But I don't see that though.
I'm looking, the very statement that you can't apply the new rule under the special permit when you previously had a special permit that allowed you to do something would be a theory that enables us to get to yes without worrying about whether something is an inspection bay or not.
But
That's
I
what I'm
don't see
asking
the
the
new
board.
rule.
I'm asking the board to consider and to explore because I don't have any particular reason for not wanting to have Mr. Alcoli to make the improvements he wants to do on his gas station. I'm looking for a way under the bylaw to make that happen. And I personally don't accept, and I will have one vote of many in this case, I personally don't accept, even with the amendment that he's made today, that the lifts are unimportant. So bear with me, under the theory I just laid out, the list would be unimportant because the whole new provision of the bylaw would not apply because he already had a special permit that didn't require any service limitation at all. So I wonder if the board could discuss this. I think if Mr. Leone can address that issue, I think he should understand that it's an issue that favors his position.
I'll let the board discuss it.
Appreciate that. I would refer to the lawyers on the board as having probably better perspective on this than those of us who are architects. Not to put our 2 associates on the spot.
No, I had a question going back a little bit, which is if we adopt the reasoning of Ms. Leon they stated earlier on, is there a way we can distinguish a situation where there is one door entering a facility that has a dozen lifts and service areas within it?
Oh, is it?
So, Mr. Rosenberg, are you asking how that would be?
If that situation were to, if we were to adopt that a bay can have multiple lifts within it, is there any way of distinguishing or limiting that precedent from being applied where you have a facility that has, when I take my car in, they pull the car into an area and there's, I think, a half dozen or 8 lifts in their cars and staff working on them. There's one door, one garage door that goes into that facility. Is that one bay or is that many? And how is there a path where we could adopt your reasoning but distinguish that situation?
I believe that, let's just say MIRAC, now McGovern. Yes, they have one giant door that you drive into, and then they bring it to all the technicians at the different lifts. That facility falls under a different section of the bylaw. I believe this section of the bylaw that we're talking about here, that we're looking for our variance on, is related to gas stations, because it's a service station that sells gasoline and it can have 3 bays. We're not talking about
Right, and
a bigger,
I respect
Yeah.
that. I use my shop as an example, but suppose it's a gas station, a service station that sells gasoline, and they have the room, and they decide rather than adding a door, they'll just add other areas within one door to service multiple vehicles. Is that distinguishable?
I don't see why we have to make that distinction. What goes on inside the building, it's what is presented to the public. The public is seeing 2 doors. The public is seeing the 3 doors. They're not seeing a
Well,
massive.
but you have a line of cars, but there are issues of traffic and congestion and a number of cars waiting to get service. So I was just curious. Sounds like there's not. I'm not making a judgment.
Right.
My sense is that if two areas to service cars behind a door is 1 bay, 12 areas to service cars behind a door is 1 bay as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, in our opinion.
So I guess I would, following up on that. So the zoning by we don't this unfortunately we don't have this in the zoning in the information we have from the town. But what would be the purpose of restricting the number of bays when a service station can have an infinite number of lifts inside, whether it has 1, 2, or 3 bays?
Well, I'll speculate, which all I'm doing really, is the size of the building and the structure itself. Most gas stations are on the main thoroughfares in residential areas, so you want to keep the size and scope of the station in keeping with the neighborhood. Otherwise, you, as Mr. Rosenberg said, if you have 18 lifts behind 3 bays, you will encourage more vehicular traffic and a bigger parking lot full of cars waiting to get in. That isn't really the case here because we have a very limited size building and a very limited size lot that won't, because of the number of parking spaces, can't accommodate added traffic and added vehicles hanging around. They can't put them on the street and park the customer cars on the street. They have to keep them on their own property, and that will limit their number of service customers.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Baranowski,
ask a question.
please.
So, Mr. Leone, I do want to hear at some point Mr. Rosenberg's view on Mr. Hanlon's alternative theory to get to yes. But before we hear that, if Mr. Rosenberg has a view on that, but before we go there, I was curious in the legislative history, if you go up on 41, the legislative history you read us from town meeting, it starts by, before we get to Mr. Faulkner's response about what a service bay is, it starts by Mr. Kendura referencing a facility, another facility. It looks like it starts on line 12 on 41.
Yes.
It says, and I'm wondering if this is to cover a new fast oil change facility there across from the Continental Cable Vision. Don't they have 3 or 4 bays there? Am I right or wrong? We go back and forth for a little while. Mr. Faulkner says his definition of service, well, says something about service bays. Going down, Mr. Kendura comes back into the conversation and says, okay, now if that's a bay, I'm curious about the number of bays they have, which I take it to be referring back to this facility.
Yeah, that facility for reference is the, Valvoline on Mystic Street near the police station. Continental Cable used to be across the street, and which is in the Armstrong Ambulance Building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my question is because just to lay my cards on the table, I don't find what Mr. Faulkner says to be super clear about what service bay is. I could read it as either the door or it's the actual area where you go up in the lift. I just don't think this is enough. But the context here to me is interesting because they're referring clearly to a actual building that exists.
Correct.
And they say, Mr. Faulkner says, that's the one proposing a definition here, says they have 3 bays. So my question to you is, can you tell me more about this facility they're talking about? Does it have, how many doors does it have for one? And then 2, do you know anything about the interior of the building in terms of what it would have had at the time?
I've had my oil changed in that. I believe it's Valvoline.
Mhm.
And it has, you pull up on, as you're coming down that Mystic Street, take a right or a left into the north side of the building. You are facing three bay doors. The door goes up, you go in, and they don't even have lifts there. They have a pit that a guy stands underneath and changes your oil from below. And then you drive out the other side, another set of doors.
So let me ask, so let me ask you another follow-up question. So there's actually, sounds like 6 doors there, one on either side.
One on either side, yeah.
Right. So let me follow-up question. How many cars can they service? And I know we're going back in time and everything, but I just want to I'm just assuming that the building hasn't changed radically in 30 years. How many cars can they service in that building at one time?
3.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
But we have to point out that that's not a service station because they do not sell gasoline.
Right, but I understand that,
Yeah.
but you're referring to this discussion as if Mr. Faulkner is giving a definition of service bay, correct?
Mhm.
And he's giving it in reference to an actual building in the world.
Yeah.
And
to
my
Mr.
question
Cantor.
was, what does that building in the world look like? Because Mr. Faulkner says that's 3 bays. So whatever that has, if it
Yeah.
had it at that time, that's a pretty good reference for what exactly a service bay is, at least in this context. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't pay attention to Mr. Hanlon's alternative theory. I'm just trying to understand first what this legislative history teaches us. It seems like that is of interest. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Mr. Baranowski. Mr. Rosenberg, not to put you on the spot, did you want to try to respond to Mr. Hammond's question?
No, I'm not sure I understood the full nuance of it. I, as to the service bay, I think I'm leaning towards, I understand, I'm sympathetic, but obviously Mr. Dillon understands that we need to, concern ourselves with precedent in a definition that will affect projects beyond his clients. So as much as, at this site, an additional area may not make much of a difference or not, although arguably it could and would. I think the concern is that there's no limitation then on that if a service bay is defined as just a door. So that's concerning. And I think the fact that there are, I believe, towns both in Massachusetts and elsewhere that tie the service bay to required number of parking spaces and other factors that suggest that it is related to the number of cars that are being serviced that require parking, that lead to congestion and other factors that we talked about. So I am concerned about that. As to Mr. Hanlon's point, if someone can maybe put a finer point on it, I'd love some help in understanding it.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
let me just, in the simplest thing, I'm assuming that there was a special permit for this gas station. That somehow somehow the 72 variance was also counted as a special permit, and think that afterwards people were assuming that was an authorization under the use tables. And so they have a permit, although maybe it's a constructive permit, that says that the use they made back then in 1972 may have been amended by later decisions of the board, is all in a special permit. It's as if they had a special permit that said right out, you could have this business there and the number of bays doesn't make any difference. And then suddenly the town changes the law and says now it does make a big difference. The number of bays has to be no more than 3.
Yep.
And my question is whether they're just grandfathered because they already had a special permit.
I think I understand better now. I think the challenge is that the special permit was the use that was made of that permit. Suppose it was a blanket permit for use. The use that was made was 3 bays, right?
That's what we're trying to deal with.
At the time. Well, no, but an expansion of that use would no longer fall
I don't
with.
really know in 1972 how many bays they had by anybody's definition.
So if in 1972 it was you have a special permit to operate a service station with however many bays a service station requires or you require, right? And therefore today you have the same permission. I think the problem is that whatever was there then, now there is a request to alter, presumably, the use that was there at the moment prior to this request for a special permit, right? And so any grandfathering doesn't exist because it wasn't the applicant didn't avail themselves of whatever unlimited permission there was in that prior permit. So there may be other situations where that analysis holds, where a special permit is sort of a blanket permission for whatever extent of use you require, even if that subsequently becomes more limited under the zoning code. But I'm having a hard time seeing that.
Yeah, I think that the way of figuring out, at least now, what happened just before the law changed is the description that was read by the writer of the opinion in the 1993 decision, because whatever it is, she certainly thought, or he, whoever it was who wrote the opinion, thought that whatever Mr. Porter was doing met the definition that she read that was from the bylaw as that it existed at that time. So it was specific. I read some of it, but I didn't bore the board in reading the whole of it. But it's there on, I think, page 7 of the opinion. So if you assume that, I don't know that that makes any difference, but at least it makes it more specific. If you assume that whatever the special permit was that was being carried on at that point, it would have allowed those things. And then the law has changed not to allow those things anymore. And then after the change, and this is, I think, what Mr. Rosenberg is adding that I didn't put in, after the change, the owner is seeking to extend that use in some way, or change that use in some way. Does that suddenly mean that, well, if you want to exchange it, you need to meet the current definition in the bylaw? Do I understand?
Well, imagine a simpler situation. Maybe it's simpler. Is you have a special permit many years ago for use as a station that has 10, at the time has 10, we'll call them bays. Later there's a renovation, you eliminate, 8 of those bays and there's 2, and now you want to put a couple back. Can you rely on the special permit you had previously that you went back when you had 10 bays?
When 10 and 2 were both in compliance, so there were.
But then there's a subsequent change that limits it to 3. Now you want to put back a couple more. You want to go back to 10. Can you go back to 10? Because you had a special permit for 10.
Okay.
I think you're now seeking to extend your use after the more limiting zoning change.
Right.
So I'm sympathetic. I'm concerned that I don't know that the interpretation aligns here too.
Right. There's a lot that we don't know. The opinion of 1993 says this is all going to the redevelopment board for a special permit. But there's not a sign in the material before us that the redevelopment board said anything in 93, or for that matter at any other time on this. So there is a hound that didn't bark here somewhere, that there must be other things and that might be relevant to this that we just don't know about.
Mm-hmm. So at this time, do we consider this structure, the current use as it is today as being defined within the zoning bylaw as a service station, which is allowed to have up to 3 service bays, or do we consider this as being a non-conforming prior use?
Mr. Chairman, I personally don't see any point at which it was non-conforming
Okay,
till now. I mean, it always
okay.
seems to have been conforming.
So it had a prior conforming use that allowed for a greater number of service bays. And when the zoning bylaw was recodified and limited the number of bays, the question is, does that hold here? Or because the use was recategorized, were there certain advantages to the older um, definition that no longer apply?
I think
And I
that's,
think Mr. Leone, you had sort of intimated that if you had a use and then they changed it and it reduced the amount of options you had on the use of your property, that the prior use category should be allowed to be maintained, um, because the change in the code should not limit the opportunities you had to develop your land that you had previously.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Once granted permission, you're good to go.
Okay. And part of the reason I asked that is the implication from the discussion that happened at the town meeting in 91 was that they had instituted a restriction on the number of bays that could be allowed at a service station to 2, and then they sort of noted that there were a lot that already had 3, and so they were going to change the category to sort of be more in alignment with what was going on at the time. And so
Mhm.
does does their change in the definition to align with what they see on the ground mean that the stations that are existing at that time now need to conform with that? Or is the implication that anyone who is coming in, they just want those new stations to be more like the ones that they have currently?
I took it more as the town correcting its mistake in defining a service station as 2 bays. And after the fact, they realized most of them had 3. And sort of whoops, we got to fix this.
Right.
That's sort of how I read the introduction of the article
Okay.
itself. And of course, that's dicta within the minutes itself.
Mhm.
But that is sort of how I, as a town meeting member for 35 years, read it.
Okay. So it's not the implication is not that the change in that stations that were in existence prior to the change in the bylaw are automatically updated and now have to fit within these new categories. The change in categories really applies to stations that go into operation after the time that the bylaw is changed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Hanlon, I think you were.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just want to be really clear that all of this business about service bays didn't affect anyone's behavior until the recodification that suddenly took that definition and stuck it into the use table. And
Right.
that's exactly what was said during the course of the meeting, and
Mhm.
that's exactly what was done in 1993. So this was all sort of explanatory material. It was blah blah. It had nothing to do with what the rules were that actually applied to service stations until it was changed so that an auto service station became a distinct use, which is now allowed under the use tables in the bylaw, and which that definition refers back to the definition that existed in 1991 and the one that had previously existed in 1975. So those were both just hortatory at that point until the change in the bylaw suddenly made them applicable.
All right. So it sounds like we have two things we need to come to a decision on. The first um, is sort of the sense to exactly what constitutes a service bay, and then the second question is whether the definition of a service station that involves a limited number of um, service bays actually applies to this particular um, site, given the history of the bylaw and the changes in the bylaw since the establishment of the business.
Yeah, I think on that issue we do. Now, we do also have a couple of other issues that, including other conditions that we may want to go over with Mr. Leone and see how he feels about those.
Okay. So I had gone back through the zoning bylaws, sort of looking at some of the things that apply. There was a discussion at the last hearing about um, the required planting of street trees. I would note that the section of the bylaw that references that um, specifically notes it applies to additions that are 50% or greater, which this would not be. So I think under the zoning bylaw, that provision doesn't actually apply here, where it's not a new building, it's not an addition over 50%, or whatever the third category is that has escaped me at the moment. Um, and so but that would be a decision that would fall back because it's in the zoning that would fall back to the building inspector to determine. Um, there's this the section 537A, which requires screening and buffering between commercial and residential uses. Um, that doesn't currently there's the residential properties that are on both sides. On one side, there's an open chain link fence. On the other side, there's a chain link fence that appears to be where the snow has been pushed for the last several decades, and so is somewhat in a mangled condition, um, which I believe the applicant would be cleaning up, certainly taking his service station in Revere as a model for what we could expect to see here. Um, but the town requires a 15-foot buffer, which obviously would not work in this circumstance, given the prior um, variance that's allowing the building to be closer to the lot line. But I believe the zoning bylaw does allow the board to make some modifications to that if given particular circumstances. So I think that's something that the board would need to discuss, because I think that's going to have to be applied by that would be applied by the building inspector during the final review of the project. The section 6111A notes that parallel parking spaces are supposed to be 8 by 22 unless they're open on an end, in which case they're 8 by 18. So I just want to make sure that gets picked up. Because all the parking spaces that are proposed are parallel. I believe I think the number of parking spaces per service station in Arlington is still governed by the size of the building. So I think the five that are proposed is more than it would be required under the zoning bylaw. I believe that's correct. But that you would be required to provide bike parking, which I think you would need to check my math, but I think you need less than one of each. So you would, like, if you had one fixture that could fit two bikes, I think you'd be in compliance. But you'd need to confirm that with the bylaw. And then there was a question about I was looking at the whether you needed to do any kind of solar stuff, but that's tied to EDR, and you're not under environmental design review with us, so that would not come into account. For conditions, I was going to recommend that apart from the standard three that the board always uses, have one that the board requests the applicant work with the tree warden to address compliance with the town's tree protection and preservation bylaw. It's very likely he's going to come back and say, you need something probably it's equally that he might come back and say you don't need something. But you are going to be required by the building department to have something from the tree department before you're allowed to get a building permit anyways. So um, that's just sort of helpful here. Um, we would condition that the board makes no determinations regarding signage under section 6.2 in the zoning bylaw and returns to the redevelopment board jurisdiction on all matters regulated under that section. So we are not dealing with signage. That's the redevelopment board's prerogative. Um, so I'm sorry that they sent you to us and we're sending you back to them, but hopefully that's not too onerous if it's just related to signage. And in regards to buffers, I was considering a condition that the applicant is to provide screening and buffers complying with section 537A, but limited in overall depth to the rear or side yard setback. And the owner is to remove the existing damaged chain link fencing, including all posts and supports. A screened enclosure for the dumpster is to be provided. So currently the dumpster is just sort of out and free floating, so it'd be good to give it a home and have it, be enclosed. Right now, when I was there looking at the station today, the dumpster was open. There was, stuff coming out of the top, overflowing the top of it. It'd be good to have that a little better contained. And then the fourth additional would be the approval of the special permit does not relieve the applicant from requirements of other sections of the zoning bylaw not referenced in this decision, nor from the requirements of other town bylaws, boards, and committees. Just limiting the scope of what our decision is, so that the implication is not that it extends farther than that.
May I ask one point of clarification?
Yeah.
On the side yard screening and everything you've said so far, we don't really have a problem with.
Yeah.
Just to be clear. On the side yard, which I'm taking the left side of the building parallel to Everett Street.
Yep.
Would the screening run just the length of the building itself or all the way out to Broadway? I wouldn't want to run it all the way out to Broadway because it might create a visual block for cars entering and leaving the station.
I think the bylaw specifically disallows it within 10 feet of the right of way.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just asking it.
Yeah.
How far we would have to go out. No problem going out to the edge of the building, maybe a little more if necessary, but I definitely want to stay 10 feet back.
There's also a tree that's very close to the property line that may be an issue as well. So we would want to make sure we don't do anything that would imperil that tree.
Right. And then those are all on the neighbor's property too. So we definitely don't want to kill their trees.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Unless the board wants to further discuss at this moment sort of those two earlier questions about the definition of service bay and the application of the earlier zoning classification, I think this would probably be a good time to open up for public comment. So with that, public comments are taken as they relate to the matter at hand, should be directed to the board for the purpose of informing its decision. Members of the public will be granted time to ask questions and make comments. Those who wish to address the board should digitally raise their hand using the button on the React tab in the Zoom application. Those calling in by phone, please dial *9 to indicate you would like to speak. You'll be called upon by the chair. You'll be asked to give your full name and address for the record and given time for your questions and comments. All questions are to be addressed through the chair. Please remember to speak clearly, and once all public questions and comments have been addressed or a designated period of time has elapsed, the public comment period will be closed. So with that, the public comment period is open. I would ask if there are any members of the public who wish to address this application. Again, this is 125 Broadway. With that, we have Mr. Steve Moore.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Steve Moore, Piedmont Street. I appreciate you opening public comment prior to talking any more about conditions that you might consider putting on any decision that the board might make, because I wanted to comment on conditions. I'm applaud the fact you are dealing with the dumpster issue, which seems to be kind of a mobile dumpster, and it does move around, and I think an enclosure is a good idea. And I'm also glad that you are considering the fact that that fence behind the property that fronts on the neighboring property really needs to be kind of modernized, upgraded, and fixed as part of neighborhood relations, I think. However, one of the issues I raised at the last hearing, or whenever that was I was concerned that whatever now is stored in that shed, which is sort of like a, kind of a really Band-Aid placed on the building, and now is going to be a service bay, perhaps with a lift in it, depending on how all this comes out. I'm concerned, as I said before, that the equipment that's currently stored in that shed still be stored within the enclosed building, not moved out to hang out on the property in some open space or parking space or whatever is there, because probably the equipment I'm talking about here is all mobile. I think the board needs to consider what is going to happen when the storage capacity of the building is decreased by replacing what is now a storage shed with stuff in it, I'm assuming, and where the dumpster was, with now a service bay. I think the storage of that excess equipment has to be considered. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Are there other members of the public who wish to address this application? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment period. In the discussion of conditions, I would also note that there are two outstanding conditions from the original 1972 decision that are currently in effect. One is that the owners and operators of the station and premises and all their successors entitle cease and desist from so-called heavy or major motor vehicle repair work, and to perform only the type of repair work normally associated with gasoline filling stations, namely those of a strictly minor nature. It is meant by this restriction and contingency to eliminate heavy body work on motor vehicles and major overhauling of vehicles on these premises. I would ask Mr. Leone, and possibly through him, Mr. El Kahoui, whether that condition is in any way is interfering with the operation of the station today, or if that is a true statement of the kind of work that would be anticipated here.
Go ahead, Mr. Leone.
No, I was going to say, I'll let Eli speak to that.
Well, we don't do any heavy work there, as we do tires, brakes, suspension works, alignments. So it's all minor stuff. It's nothing like we don't rebuild engines. The most things we do probably replacing a clutch, which is not a heavy work.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't do any of that stuff.
Nor do you do any body work.
No, we don't do. We're not equipped with that stuff. No.
Okay. So that condition as it stands can just continue, and we don't need to worry about.
Yeah.
No. Okay. And the other one that's currently is that no additional structures, temporary or permanent, or vehicles to be situated, constructed, or affixed to the premises, which will be utilized for the storage or sales of any equipment whatsoever. I keep reading this and I'm very puzzled by the vehicles affixed to the premises, but that's what it does say. So that would, to the point that was raised by Mr. Moore about the storage of things, of extra equipment, this current condition on that came out in 1972 and is still in effect would preclude the construction of additional storage outside of the confines of the building. And I just wanted to.
Yeah, as Eli's son Richie told us one of the previous meetings, there's not a lot in that storage shed, snow blowers, some engine lifts and things of that nature, which would be easily accommodated within the excess space of the new proposed area that they want to build. It could be stored along the walls, near the front, in the corners, and it wouldn't interfere with their work in that new area. The new car lift 4, we'll call it, area.
Okay, so that condition can stay as is and is
It's not an issue.
not an issue.
Not
Okay,
an issue,
perfect.
no.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that. Um, and then we had discussed previously the other conditions I had proposed. Were there any other conditions that members of the board wanted to apply before we sort of got back to the sort of the meat of this discussion? Seeing none. So as I had noted before, there's sort of these two real so the real contentions. One is what exactly is a service bay, and the other is whether because of the age of the station and its the time when it was originally approved, does that have any bearing on the number of bays that it is allowed to have at this time? Um, and I think that this discussion is very complicated because of there's the term service bay and there's a reference to bays. And sometimes it appears when the term bay is used, it means service bay. Um, and sometimes there's the term bay is used and it may or may not be related to service bay. So it's sort of very complicated. And it's unfortunate that the decision um, from 93 is not more specific in what they mean by the term bay. Um, I think that obviously that would have made everybody's life a lot easier. Um, the discussion that took place in 1991, um, where it defines a bay as a door leading to a lift, is tricky because if you take it by the door part of the statement, then as many lifts as are behind the door, that's still a bay. If you take it going to a lift, then it sort of leaves that open to interpretation. Does that mean that if there's two lifts and you have a car going into a lift, and then you have another car going into a lift, does that mean that there's now two bays? And my and the to the point that was raised earlier, um, the question about sorry, I was just letting someone in the waiting room. Um, if you have a three doors, but you have a wide, but you have those lead to 9 or 12 bays. When the town put the or lifts, excuse me, when the town put the bylaw into effect, was the town trying to limit the size of the building, meaning the number of garage doors that would be on the front, or was the town trying to limit the number of service areas within the buildings, um, for whatever reason they may have wanted to limit that, as opposed to limit the number of the size of the building itself. And unfortunately, I think that's a sort of a very complicated question. We have very limited guidance on that point. Um, so my sense has always been that the number of service bays is the number of places where service can take place. And that if you have in the case of this structure, because there are three lifts where service can take place, that constitutes three service bays. And certainly when I was at the site this morning about 9:30, around 11 o'clock, and sort of walking around, checking out things. There were vehicles on all three lifts, and there was a fourth car that was in getting an inspection at the same time. So there were four vehicles um, inside the building, and then people getting gas. There were probably 6 or 7 cars in the parking area. So it's obvious that it's very busy, and that there's a need for um, facilities to service buildings and to service vehicles at this building. That there certainly appears to be a lot of desire for that. It definitely appears that the lift that is on the left-hand side, that one is being, it was up on the lift, assuming somebody was, I couldn't quite see if there was somebody working in there or not. I didn't want to be obtrusive. But definitely there was, there were 3 cars being serviced plus an inspection at the same time. So does that mean that there's currently 3 service bays on this in this building? My sense is yes. But um, I would certainly entertain other opinions on that.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Baranowski.
I tend to agree with you that the service bays and the interior space of the building to work on one vehicle at a time and with emphasis on service. I think that the conversation that we've had over the past several meetings have taken us through various data points that bolster that. The dictionary, Webster's, indicates that it's the interiority that matters. I think this discussion from the town meetings points in that direction as well, in terms of it focusing on driving up onto a lift. It also focusing on this building that, at least if the building hasn't changed over time, has had space to work on 3 vehicles inside. And if that's the context that they're thinking about at the time, they're thinking about that building having space for 3 services, basically 3 cars to be serviced at that moment. I think, just stepping back, I agree with Mr. Rosenberg. I think it is, one can imagine the reasonable reason for being concerned about what's going on inside the building in terms of how much service can be provided at that building, and therefore how many cars are going to be trafficked there beyond the provision of gas. So I tend to think that the most sensible reading of this, given what we have, is that service bay means what you've said, basically an interior space to work on 1 vehicle.
Other opinions on that matter from the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hanlon.
I don't have another opinion. I share the opinion that was just expressed.
Okay.
And I also would like to point to Mr. Rosenberg's pointing out that other towns at least use the same concept as a bay under circumstances where they're attempting to control parking and activity on the site. And where they do that, they clearly talk about having more than 1 bay for a single door.
Okay. So with that in mind, can we interpret, and I will lean more heavily upon my lawyerly board members, where the original permitting for this use on this parcel was done without restriction on the number of bays that were allowed, and the use has been continuous throughout, and has not been discontinued, and has never been reduced at any point in time, and was increased in 1972 with the construction of the new building. Is there any reason that the current restriction limiting the building to only having 3 bays supersedes the prior approval that was granted to the building, where it was granted the permission to be a service station, and at the time, service stations were allowed to have as many service bays as they deemed fit.
Again, I have a hard time understanding how you could interpret it in a way that the original permission to make a use of a service station when there was no limitation on the number of bays, how that would supersede a subsequent restriction on that use, when the number of bays was not being utilized at the time of the original permission. I have a hard time seeing that.
So you have a hard time seeing how you could have bays in addition to three where they were not bays in addition to three at the time it was originally constructed. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm not seeing how a subsequent restriction on a use, um, obviously, a restriction on use cannot take precedent over an existing permitted use that became non-conforming, because the extent of it was limited by subsequent zoning. That certainly, but where it was not being the property was not being used previously prior to the zoning change in the manner that at the extent to which the zoning change limited it, I don't know how you have any sort of what we call grandfathering rights to that extent of a use. I don't follow. It may have, unless I'm mistaken, at the time of the original permitting, it may have made use of as many bays as it desired, but it did not use more than 3 bays, has not been using 3 bays during that period, and now seeks to add a bay. So that additional bay was never utilized, so it can't have been a pre-existing use prior to the zoning change.
Okay.
Right?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hanlon.
So I'm kind of persuaded by that. I'm not just kind of persuaded by that. I am persuaded by that. I'm not sure that if we were inventive and had a long time, we couldn't try to figure out a way around it. But that's because that's what lawyers do. So I'm not. I tend to be to incline with Mr. Rosenberg's view, unless somebody else can think of a way of rescuing my own theory better than I can. But I do want to say that if we're in this situation, just judging from the conversation so far, all members of the board who have addressed this have addressed it. The chairs have basically endorsed the chair's formulation that a bay consists of the area where the work is done. I didn't get that exactly right, but the transcript will show what was said. And at least Mr. Rosenberg and I are not very confident in the theory that I tried to deal with earlier. Now, if we stick with that and there's nothing else that goes on, then the sense of the board, as I see it now, is that this should be denied. And we did have a theory before that Mr. Leone has more or less rejected for practical reasons, because he thinks his theory is better and because it is more restrictive and would have an adverse effect on his client's building. But I'd like to actually say is that if we're in a situation where the board acts in the way in which it seems to be leaning now, whether he'd rather us just do that or whether we should revive the notion of an inspection bay. And I think that Mr. Leone and his client, really, it's up to them with which way we go. Or at least as far as I'm concerned, I'd be very much influenced by what they said.
Mr. Leone, in regards to so at the prior hearing, we had discussed the possibility of differentiating between service bays and inspection bays, and allowing the construction of an additional service bay at the station with the effectively setting aside the current area where the inspections take place and the lift behind it as being what we would refer to as an inspection bay. And I know that yourself and Mr. Hanlon had gone back and forth a little over the intervening 2 weeks on sort of how one might define that. And I know you had reached out to the board late this afternoon, sort of indicating that you had not come to an agreement on what that might be. So was just ask if you could talk a little bit about the conversations you've had with your client and sort of where that went off from what we were talking about 2 weeks ago.
The project wouldn't be economically feasible.
Okay.
to build the new area, install a new lift, and then relegate the existing lift to a matter of an inspection bay, and keeping within the DMV's requirements that people can only have to wait so long. That does limit by itself the nature of the repairs that can be done in there. And you know, that's anything he does in there is not a long-term thing. Say he's replacing somebody's tires, which wouldn't be something that is discovered during an inspection, but someone got a flat tire. That car goes on the lift. That wouldn't fit within the definition that has been proposed. And the car could go on the lift and could be lifted up out of the line of sight for the headlight inspection portion of your inspection, which is the reason you need such a long, big bay. That would not be able to be done in that bay. So it's going to cause extra traffic at the site. It's going to cause extra wait for the clients, and it's going to essentially make that lift and bay economically unviable. So it would impact the entire project. Whether he would proceed or not, I don't know.
Okay. Is that bay currently is that lift currently used for longer term work? I only asked because when I was there today and they were doing an auto inspection, there was a vehicle on that lift that was in the air. And so it was difficult to ascertain if, if it just happened to be up there for the 5 minutes I was there, or if it's the kind of thing where a vehicle might be going up and down for half a day while they're working on it.
Well, no, like what he tells me he does in that bay is he'll do oil changes. Someone shows up, needs a quick oil change. He can lift the car up. If someone comes for an inspection, he can put it up for the 5-10 minutes that it's needed for the headlight portion. Someone needs a tire change. He'll put it in there, take the tire off the car, wait for the tire to get delivered, and then mount the tire. So he's doing that kind of. He's not doing suspension work or work of that nature, non-heavy work. That doesn't occur in that bay because that's the car needs to be down at body level to do that kind of work. So
yeah,
that kind of work doesn't heavier but not heavy work doesn't get done there. It's just quicker one-shot deal stuff. And that's, if he couldn't do that in that bay, then that just, impacts the revenue of the station to such an extent that I don't know if it'd be viable to do any of the project.
Okay.
And then,
yeah,
and like you said, most of his customers are neighborhood folks.
right.
Yeah.
I was sort of thinking like the tire rotation, stuff like that is not, I think one of the things that had come up earlier was the saying that it could be used um for safety.
Mm-hmm.
And so the concern that we had is that safety is a very open term. Safety could be changing a light, it could be fixing a tire, could be replacing a ball joint. It just sort of goes off the rails in terms of, what the full scope of what would be a repair to a car that impacts its safety, because it's almost everything in a vehicle now is related to safety. Um, So I think that was our reluctance to sort of exploring that avenue further. I'm wondering if, as we had to before the inspection bay, it could be for inspections or analysis and evaluation of vehicles. Um, and I don't know if the board would want to consider additional things that it may find are sufficiently close to those services to be included in that and not fully fall under a service bay. Um, and how do we define that without it being too fuzzy a delineation? Um, because to your point, I could certainly understand that given the amount of business that appeared to be on site today, that, certainly the ability to move more quickly through more vehicles would certainly be an advantage and be something that would be amenable, that the public would certainly enjoy. Our, our side of the thing is that, we need to make sure that whatever decision we make is a decision that we're not putting ourselves into a hole somewhere down the line.
Well, if I think about it though, we're talking about 8 stations, 9 stations in the town.
Mhm.
Almost all of them have 3 bays already.
Yep.
Doors. If you go down Mass Ave, you have the 2 up by Jimmy Steer House. They don't have 3 doors, but they also don't have the room to put another addition such as he's doing. So I think the fear that if you allow a bay to be called a door that leads to an area where lifts are located, it's sort of, the future harm, I don't believe is there. And this station is configured on its lot that would allow it. Anyone else would have to come back to you for approval, and it would have to have such configuration to allow that use. I mean, you have the gas station up on Parfit Ave Extension. He's got a lot of land there. I think he already has 3 doors. You go down Mass Ave, the next one you hit are the 2 by Jimmy Steer House. 2 small stations on small lots that have 2 doors. The next one is Shell. He's got 3 doors already. Then you have Eli's. He's got 3 doors. Across the street, you have BP. BP has 2, but he's got a very big lot there. And then the only other service station besides Eli is Gulf down on the bottom of River Street in Mystic Valley Parkway. He's got 2 doors, and his station is configured so unless he rebuilds the entire station, wouldn't have a place to put another door and another bay in that lot. So I think the way I'm reading it, there's an intrinsic fear that if you allow a door to be called the bay with the lifts behind it, there's going to be a rush of people trying to do this. And the only other option is to go back and have town meeting change the bylaw to define lift, to define bay. But that's going to be 2028 at this point, right? Because the warrant's closed for this year. So it'd be actually next year.
27,
yeah, it'd be next year, 2027, unless there's a special, but then you got to get 100 people to sign off. So I think that if this is not letting the horse out of the barn by utilizing a bay as a door, and then if you want to redefine it later on, go for it. But I don't think that there's a, I discussed these with my my workmates and other people, and they're sort of like they can't believe that this is an actual hard decision for you folks. It's kind of like it's a no-brainer. I mean, a door's a bay, and if there's 2 lifts inside a bay, who cares? What goes on inside the building moves the traffic in and out of there faster. So there's less cars on the lot. There's less people hanging around waiting. It's just the convenience to the public, I think, outweighs any hesitation you may have defining a door as a bay with 1 lift or 2 lifts behind it. And to say it's an inspection bay, I don't think he'd do the project. He just texted me. He had to leave to go pick his daughter up. Hope she's not at the airport. So I can't ask him that right now, but
Okay. Well, thank you for that. So I guess what would be the sense of the board on that? if we're not redefining that bay and we have two doors and three lifts, do we want to reconsider how we think of what connotates a service bay, or do we feel that we have our answer?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Rosenberg.
I think one of the challenges we're having is that, and I think to Mr. Leon's point, is I don't think there's been many instances where this concern needed to be addressed, because I think that it's sort of self-limiting, right? That your typical configuration of a service station, you're going to have a number of doors and a number of service areas, and typically the way they're configured is you're going to have approximately a one-to-one of doors to service areas. And a bay is, whether a bay is the door or the service area, inside it typically it's going to be about one-to-one.
Yeah.
And certainly to some extent will be self-limiting, so that the intent or the spirit, as you point out, which is either the size of the building or the number of cars that are being serviced and coming in and out, generally is circumscribed and adheres to around 3 vehicles and 3 doors or 3 service areas. And, we don't have anyone running out scrambling to build a mega, car service facility behind one door. So I think, I agree this may be a problem that may not come to fruition. I have a challenge as a board member and a lawyer of looking at what I think the definition means, and ruling otherwise. So I'm left with that. I do think that, in terms of meeting the spirit and intent of this massing and the sizing and the traffic of these facilities, 4 service areas within 3 doors or 2 doors probably meets that intent, but I don't think it meets the letter. I don't know what to do with that, but I just want to point that out, that I agree, that this is probably not a situation that's going to be an affront to the intent of those restrictions. But I have concerns with the definition. If there was some way we could understand this tandem situation of the service areas behind a door as being distinct from a door that leads to multiple bays, maybe there's a distinction there that I'm missing. And Mr. Leon can help us, think about that first bay, which has 2 tandem service areas behind one door, as something different than the hypothetical I imagine, where you have multiple areas behind a door, which is problematic. That might be a helpful distinction.
Yep.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Baranowski.
I agree with Mr. Rosenberg. I think it's not so much whether we're kind of opening a can of worms per se in terms of how we interpret this. I just think that we're just trying to figure out what this means, what's the best meaning of it, given the words, given all of the information that's been submitted to us in terms of the dictionary, in terms of the this legislative history, in terms of possibly what the legislative history was referring to in terms of buildings out in the world. And I just come back to, it just seems that the service bay, and also giving what seemingly was the purpose here, I go back to the service bay seems to be about the interior space where service is provided. So I agree that might lead, that leads to a bad outcome here. But I'm ultimately just trying to figure out what that means. That's what is the biggest concern to me, because those are the words we have, and those are the words we have to make sense of the best we can.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hanlon.
Just picking up on Brad's point, what concerns me isn't so much, I agree that I would rather be able to say yes. I've actually tried hard to figure out a way of saying yes. So I'm certainly not against this, and frankly, if this comes back to town meeting, I have a pretty good idea how I would vote on it. but I think that I'm very nervous about our adopting a practice where we have developed a view as to what a certain language means, as I have here. But then we say, but if we don't interpret it that way, let's interpret it in a way that that will enable something that is forbidden by the bylaw to happen because it really ought to happen. And that is a kind of sort of a methodological way of approaching this that essentially it kind of undermines the rule of law here altogether. And I'm not so much worried about what somebody else is going to do with the service station. I'm worried about somebody else coming here and making an argument essentially that, look, if you don't follow what you think the law means, you shouldn't worry about it because it's not going to be a bad precedent here. And the next time we think that the law might have been written better, you can continue to go down that same road each time. And that leads to, we have had that situation with respect to our bylaw more than once, and it ultimately is not a good way to proceed. And that's my concern, is that we're just undermining procedurally every time. It's always a good argument that it would make better sense from a policy point of view to take an interpretation you think is wrong and do it, because what's the harm? And the harm is that you undermine the integrity of the bylaw.
Okay. So it sounds from where we are at the moment, that we don't have the votes to approve.
Mhm.
Um, and that being the case, I would ask the board if there's any additional information members of the board feel they need in order to render a decision on this application. Seeing none, I think based on what we've heard so far, um, it doesn't sound like the board is in a position to render a positive decision on this matter. So the board can either move, we can either move to close and draft a decision in favor of denial. Um, or if the applicant would prefer to withdraw, that's certainly an option as well. But if the applicant's looking for a specific denial with an eye towards the future, then um, I think that that's where the board is at this point.
Well, either way, it's a bad outcome, I think, for the applicant and the town. A denial without any direction leaves Mr. El Cooley with only one option. And a withdrawal leaves him with no options. A withdrawal, but we can't come back with the same plan because we know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Short of going to town meeting and changing the bylaw, withdrawal is useless.
Okay.
And I believe it's not like you guys are going to change your mind if I file again next week. But I think that it depends on your interpretation of a ill-defined bylaw.
Yeah.
And it can be defined either way. And one definition leaves us with a denial and the outcome of that, and the other leaves us with an improved parcel that is a benefit to the town.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, and And Kent, just as she said in '93, the economic hardships on the applicant, if it's denied, outweigh any harm, if there is any harm.
Mhm. Okay. With that, I have to ask Mr. Hanlon if he'd be willing to direct the drafting of a decision in this matter.
Mr. Chairman, I vote yes.
Okay. And then with that, I will move that the Zoning Board of Appeals close the public hearing, docket 3873, 125 Broadway.
Second.
Thank you so much. So with that, vote of the board, Mr. Dupont being absent, Mr. Hanlon,
Yes.
Mr. Holly,
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc,
Yes.
Mr. Baranowski,
Yes.
Mr. Rosenberg.
Yes.
Your votes yes, we are closed on the matter of 125 Broadway.
Thank you for
both.
your consideration and your time. It was a good thought exercise.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah.
With that, that moves us to on our agenda. Where are you? There you are. To item 6 on our agenda, which is docket 3892, 468 Mystic Street. This is an application for a special permit. The applicant is represented by Mary Winstanley O'Connor, so I will go ahead and ask her to introduce those involved and tell us what they're proposing to do.
Thank you, Chairman Klein. Good evening, and members of the board. Let me introduce the team. On the call is Jim Simmons, who's the general manager of the Winchester Country Club. And we have the team from Beals and Thomas, Sarah Stearns, who's a principal and the project manager and has dealt with the conservation aspects of this project. Thomas Matt Cote, who is the civil engineer, and Judson Hornfeck, who is the project architect. They're all from Beals and Thomas. There was a request for, after consultation with Mr. Champa, the building inspector, there was a special permit filed to add additional clubhouse space at the Winchester Country Club. This was filed under 8.1.4, which, as you know, provides for other buildings other than 1 and 2 family homes that are prior non-conforming uses. The Winchester Country Club, I did not realize this, has been around for 120 years at that site. So it preceded the zoning bylaw by some time. And under that section of the bylaw, the non-conformity may be extended or altered, providing the resulting alteration and extension shall not cause the structure to further violate the dimensional and density regulations. Now, this proposed addition does not violate any of the dimensional and density regulations, nor does it violate any other section of 8.1.4. I can tell you that the team has been to the Conservation Commission, and after extensive hearing and review, they have approved the needed relief to add this addition. I don't know, Chairman Klein and the board, if you'd like me to go through the special permit criteria now or wait until the team makes the presentation, because they have a slide deck to show you.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead with the presentation and then we'll come back to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
So
you.
Sarah Stearns, I believe, has the slide deck.
Ms. Stearns?
Yes, thank you, Mary, and thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Good evening. For the record, Sarah Stearns with Beals and Thomas. My colleague Matt Cody is going to be sharing his screen. We've got a few slides to share. I know it's getting late, so we will be as brief as we can to get our point across and just give you a sense of the planned addition to the clubhouse at Winchester Country Club. So starting sort of high level and then zooming in, this is the entirety of the property, and you'll see the majority of it is in Winchester, with the southern portion being in Arlington, Arlington, and where Matt's hand is over by the swimming pool area is right where we're talking about the proposed addition. So if you go to the next slide, Matt, and sort of zooming in on that aerial image, we've got a clear view of the existing clubhouse. As Mary said, it's been in place for many decades. The yellow square indicates the proposed addition area in the rear of the building between the existing structure and the swimming pool area, which is right now consists of a portion of it is a maintained lawn and a portion of it is a terrace, sort of indoor-outdoor space. I'll point out with this image, because I think it shows it pretty clearly, as part of the assessment of the location and sizing and scope of this addition, a lot of thought was given to the surrounding area, particularly the mature trees that you see between Mystic Street and the existing clubhouse. A lot of care was put into that to maintain the vegetation and also the privacy screen, and really just minimize the footprint for this addition as much as possible. The right where Matt's hand is actually is a small little sport court, basketball court. That is the location of the proposed stormwater management area, subsurface stormwater management. Again, trying to keep the footprint of the required elements to manage the stormwater from the new structure in an area that was not going to cause additional disturbance. As Mary mentioned, we completed our review with the Arlington Conservation Commission in February. The Herbert Meyer Brook runs just south of this area where the tree line is. So this whole area is within their jurisdiction. So we went into a lot of detail with that commission too and made some adjustments to the plan. Again, keeping in mind minimizing the footprint of the proposed work as much as possible for various reasons. The size of this addition is about 3,100 square feet. And just to give you a sense, the existing clubhouse is about 18,000 square feet. So just scale wise, it's, it's not nothing, but it's not a huge addition. And, the purpose of this is to really help the club reconfigure the interior space as well as they possibly can. But after going through that assessment, it was clear that some additional square footage would be necessary. One of the goals of this is just to give the membership, different dining options and improve the flow of a building that's been sort of pieced together over time. And I just wanted to make sure we made the point tonight that the intention of this addition is not to increase the membership of the club. No, it's really just to serve the existing membership. So no additional members, no additional parking or anything like that as part of this proposal. I think we can go to the next slide, Matt. And if anyone wants to jump in or stop me or ask a question, feel free. I hesitated to put this in here because it's the reverse. So you'll see the north arrow is facing down on this. But I figured you could bear with us just because I think it does showcase the plan view pretty well. This was a rendering done by the landscape architect that's involved with the project. So again, just sort of the reverse view with Mystic Street on our left this time. And Matt, maybe you can point to the addition itself just as it compares to the existing clubhouse. We are close to the town line, but the entirety of this addition is proposed in Arlington. I think we can go to the next slide, Matt. It's so nice to have somebody else sharing the screen for me while I'm talking. This is just an excerpt of the site plan that we presented to the Conservation Commission. It's a little more detailed. It shows a bit more of the stormwater design and infrastructure that was reviewed as part of the notice of intent with the Concom. Again, just kind of showing where the subsurface infrastructure is proposed, where that tennis court is now, or excuse me, basketball court is now, with minimal grade change or site work, really just trying to keep that proposed work in that small footprint there. Next slide. So this is one that I thought would be helpful. Our architect from Chambers is on the line tonight as well, who helped put this rendering together for us. So in the large picture, you see the existing conditions sort of looking from the area where the brook is or from the pool areas to the left in the photo. And that's what things look like today. Pivoting over to the smaller photos. Really that lower right one, I think, kind of gives us the best vision of proposed sort of overlaid with existing. So I think that gives you a sense of what's proposed here with the interior and outdoor space as well. The one right above it, if you can scroll up, Matt, as I said to the architect, it's such a good rendering, you almost can't tell what's proposed and what's existing. So we wanted to try to highlight it in that lower right photo to give a better sense of how the addition and the architecture would blend with the existing feel of the building. And you can see the trees that I was talking about in the earlier slide here, preserved. And, I think that was an important aspect to, the club's maintenance of the area. You can't see it in this photo. I guess you can see it in the existing photo, but there is a stockade fence as well that runs along Mystic Street in this area. So again, we don't anticipate that much of this building even will be visible from Mystic. Perhaps a portion of the roof. These are deciduous trees, so maybe when they drop their leaves this time of year, it would be, peeking between the fence and the trees. You'd see the construction and sort of the upper part of the roof line. But again, it's sort of tucked in the rear of the building, existing building. So I think that's about it. I'll pause there, turn it back to you, Mr. Chair, and we're happy. We've got plenty of people on the line to try to answer the board or the public's questions as they come up. Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you have any just floor plans? This is just sort of showing a little bit as to how this integrates with the rest of the building.
I think we have that slide, Matt, that shows the overview, and then perhaps we can have Judson share a floor plan if he has it at his disposal. If this one isn't as detailed, maybe you can stop sharing your screen and find that other slide if you need to. Or Judson, if you have a better slide at your fingertips that you'd prefer to share, that's fine too. You're muted, Judson.
Sorry about that. Yeah, just give me a moment while I bring up a slide here.
So maybe while he's looking for that, Matt, you could put up the one that we just have it show the area wise. So this just shows area wise how this blends, but I guess it's more general.
So is there still sort of a court with in the white area between the blue and the red or is it continuous throughout?
I'll defer to Judson to describe it, just representing the architect. I don't want to speak for him.
Sorry about that. I'm gonna just try and put something here and do a little workaround and bring the plan up and we can talk in depth about it. can you all see my screen here with the plan up?
Not at the-
No.
How about now?
It is loading. There it
Okay.
comes.
There we
Okay.
go.
Okay. Sorry about that. Um, so I'll try to zoom in here, as we work through the spaces. But if you can imagine, Mystic Street is on your left here. This is the front parlor, kind of historic building, and then this, if you can imagine this rectangle here, is the new addition. And so when it comes to the existing walls, those are the kind of pochade gray that you can imagine here. We're reconfiguring the kitchen inside to provide more space for both a la carte and banquet functions. And we're making the corridors themselves a little bit wider and more gracious. And then when it comes to the addition, this is where we have our approach here, as well as a casual and adult dining portion, and then associated outdoor seating that wraps around here. Now you will notice that we've been very cautious about the existing front parlor house. So we made sure that any addition happening here, any construction was happening outside of the footprint of that historic building, so as to not impact it at all. And were there specific questions about the plan that I can help with?
No, I think that sort of clarifies there's more sort of the way it connects to the existing building and just making sure sort of understood it's how it's set into the existing, fabric of the building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we kind of describe them as little architectural gaskets where we're being careful with not only the building itself, the historic building itself, but just the foundations and everything, where the new portion is connected to the old existing building. But we've got this corridor space here and this service zone here that kind of act as the glue that connects them on either side to this new addition and blends it in without too heavy of a touch on what exists.
Okay, thank you. So I had a couple questions that sort of come up as looking through it. So this is seeking a special permit under section 542B6, which is the large additions, which we don't often see in a non-residential manner, but because this is in the R0 zoning district, that section of the code still applies. And that section has its own specific findings that the board needs to reach on top of the standard condition findings that the board needs to reach for a special permit, and also under section 814. It's I think it's I noted in reviewing some things, I think the existing gas service may be relocated temporarily or permanently. And I remember, I believe, Ms. O'Connor, in your statement that you had written, that has been cleared with the building departments. That's not an issue here.
I actually, Chairman Klein did not meet with the building department. Beals and Thomas prepared this
Okay.
application and they met with Mike Champa.
Oh, perfect. Okay. And I know there was some discussion about prior decisions on this site. There are decisions going all the way back to 1944, which involved the dismantling of some military installation to build a curling facility on site.
Yes.
So there's a long history of this. But in going through, it did not appear that there were any specific decisions of the board that would necessarily be impacted by this.
No, Miss Ralston was kind enough to send me the decisions, which are quite old and very brief. And some are only one page.
Yep.
And I agree with you on that.
Okay. Um, so I don't, so those were the things that had come to me in my initial review. Are there any specific questions from other members of the board? Seeing none at this time, I will go ahead and open this meeting for public comment. Just remind the public comment is taken as it relates to the matter at hand should be directed to the board for the purpose of informing its decision. Those wishing to speak can digitally raise their hand using the raise hand button in the React tab in the Zoom application. Those dialing in by phone can dial *9. You'll be asked to identify yourself by name and address and given time for your questions and comments. All questions will be addressed through the chair. So with that, are there any members of the public who wish to address this application? Again, this is docket number 3892, 468 Mystic Street. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public comment period for this public hearing. So again, what the board has before us, this is an application for an addition to the existing building at the Winchester Country Club. I believe the addition is in excess of 750 square feet. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So it falls under both 542B6 as a large addition, but also, as had been stated at the start, under 814. So with that, Ms. O'Connor, you had prepared some preliminary findings for the board to consider?
Yes, to review the special permit findings. This is a prior non-conforming use in what is now the RO district. So it preceded the bylaw. I would suggest to you that the requested use is essential or desirable to the public convenience or welfare because it provides services and improvements for members as well as operational needs at the club. It will not create, the proposed addition will not create undue traffic congestion or unduly impair pedestrian safety. As Ms. Stern said, there'll be no increase in membership as a result of this addition, and thus no increase in additional traffic parking. The requested use will not overload any public water drainage or sewer system. It is not anticipated that this project would put any additional strain on the utilities. The special regulations that apply are 8.1.4A, and I believe that I have gone through 8.1.4A. The requested use will not impair the integrity or character of the district or adjoining districts, nor be detrimental to the health or welfare for the town. And clearly, the requested use will not, by its addition to the neighborhood, cause an excess of that use, because this is the only country club that's partially in the town of Arlington. So I would suggest to you that the applicant can satisfy the special permit criteria. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board.
Thank you. In addition, we had noted section 542B6 for large additions. So the findings that are required by the board needs to be able to find that the alteration or addition is in harmony with other structures and uses in the vicinity. In making its determination, the board is to consider the dimensions and setbacks in relation to abutting structures and uses, consider conformity with the purposes of the bylaw. So specifically in relation to the large addition ones, obviously, the only structures and uses in the vicinity really is the country club. Everything else is pretty far afield. And as we had
Correct.
seen from the presentation, the proposed addition is a very well-crafted addition to the existing building in keeping with the sort of the form and scale and detailing that's in the existing building, and certainly could easily be found to be in harmony with the other structures. The dimensions and setbacks in relation to abutting structures and uses. So that for the abutting structures, similar to before, it's intended to be an integral part of the building, but it's also it is not encroaching upon any other structures or directly upon Mystic Street, or to any abutters. So there's no issues there. Um, and in conformity with the purposes of the bylaws, it was also addressed in the initial findings that this is an expansion of an existing use. It's an amenity that many members of the Arlington and Greater Arlington community are able to take advantage of. And it provides a place for outdoor recreation and preservation of open space. And it is also which is acknowledged that this has been approved by the Conservation Commission, who has looked into issues surrounding the brook on the property, and the relation of the addition and the building to that brook. So, and they have found in favor of the proposal. Are there any additional questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hanlon?
I'll be very quick this time. I was impressed by the showing of all of the preservation of trees that are going on, and it's a general theory, really, of what this is about. Because, I mean, ultimately, this is an area which its purpose under the bylaw is to be low density residential. It's our lowest density residential in town. And the preservation of vegetation and the preservation of the kind of uses that are being made here, I think are very helpful in contributing to the continuation of the feel and the nature of and the character of the zoning district. And in that sense, it's particularly valuable. You could easily imagine what else might be done. And those are not very pleasant things to imagine necessarily. And it's a relief to have this continue to thrive and continue to do what it's doing. And it fits so perfectly into the setting in the town.
Thank you, Mr. Hanlon. Anything further from members of the board?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Baranowski?
when you refer this to Mr. Hanlon to write an opinion, can I say we do a condition that we write this opinion only as long as these old opinions? Let's make that our to ourselves. We can just do that. I think everyone would benefit, including the authors.
Yep.
That's all.
My favorite was that the wooden shack that was constructed temporarily for curling during World War II was the subject of a later zoning decision, like 15 years down the line, where they were looking to use it for another purpose.
Simpler times.
Simpler times. With that, are there members of the board who feel that there's any additional information the board needs before it's able to render a decision in this matter? Seeing none, I would ask Mr. Hanlon if he'd be willing to direct drafting of an opinion in favor of approval.
Gone for just a second. Did we do public comment and there wasn't any? Is that the?
That is correct.
Okay. Yes, I'm happy to direct the assignment, preferably to the most concise member of the board.
Excellent. Then with that, I would ask if there are any, so there are 3 standard conditions the board would apply to any of its decisions. The first is the plans and specifications approved by the board for the special permit shall be the final plans and specifications submitted to the building inspector of the town of Arlington in connection with this application for zoning relief. Should be no deviation during construction from approved plans and specifications without the express written approval of the Arlington Zoning Board of Appeals. Second is the building inspector is hereby notified they are to monitor the site and should proceed with appropriate enforcement procedures at any time they determine that violations are present. Building inspector shall proceed under section 3.1 of the zoning bylaw and under the provisions of chapter 40, section 21D of the Massachusetts general laws and institute non-criminal complaints. If necessary, the building inspector may also approve and institute appropriate criminal action, also in accordance with section 3.1. And the third is that the board shall maintain continuing jurisdiction with respect to this special permit grant. Are there any additional conditions that members of the board feel would be appropriate? I did note in the information that was provided by the applicant, believe there were some proposed existing condition. Oh, that's conditions under a different definition of the word conditions. Okay, never mind that. Are there any legal conditions that members of the board feel would be appropriate to, in addition to the three standard? Seeing none, I will move that the Zoning Board of Appeals for the town of Arlington close the public hearing in docket 3892, 468 Mystic Street.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hanlon. So roll call vote of the board in favor of closing the hearing. Absence of Mr. Dupont, we have Mr. Hanlon,
Yes.
Mr. Holly,
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc,
Yes.
Mr. Barnowski,
Yes.
Mr. Rosenberg.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, we are closed on Mystic Street. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good evening.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. So that comes to the end of our agenda items. Just for reference of the board, this morning was the groundbreaking for 10 Sunnyside Avenue. The weather was incredibly cooperative, as was appreciated by everyone present. Very nice set of speeches and presentation from the Housing Corporation of Arlington, who presently has over 200 units that are available to at affordable rates, and this project will add 43 to that count. They hope to be done late spring of 27. And they are starting out, they're getting out of the ground right now, so they are working diligently and quickly. So as you're driving down Broadway, take a look.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hanlon.
it's my understanding that a fairly large, not a huge large, but a substantial number of units will be available to people at 30% of the AMI, which is much more deeply discounted than the minimum that's generally done and is particularly welcome.
That is correct. Yeah. And we have one more meeting in March, which will be March 24th. Mr. Ralston, what's on our agenda for the 24th?
One second, I had it up and I put it back down, I think. Let's see. We know 71 Mystic will be back with their fence.
Oh, great.
He should be on for that one. And I believe there's one other one. And then 49 Fisher Road, I believe they're just doing a porch / addition.
Okay. Great.
And all of their stuff is up in OpenGov if anybody wants to read them now for fun.
Excellent. So April is the time of year when the board elects officers. As I have threatened for several years, I have been serving in the position of chair since for 6 years. And I think it's due time for someone else to take over the reins of this board. And I'm happy to speak with anyone who has interest in doing so. It's been my privilege to serve, but I think it's time for someone else to take over, and so we'll be accepting nominations in April for that position. And we also Pat and I have been talking off and on about updating the rules and regulations for the board because they are probably 5 years old now. They're fairly out of date. And so if someone is interested in joining in on that task, please let one of us know and we'll find a way to incorporate you in such a fashion that we are not creating a public records issue and not violating the public meeting law. So those are the two things that are coming up for us. And with that, I would like to thank you all for your participation in tonight's meeting of the Arlington Zoning Board of Appeals. I appreciate everyone's patience throughout the meeting. I would especially like to thank Colleen Ralston, Mike Champa, and Mike Cunningham for their assistance in preparing for and hosting this online meeting. Please note the purpose of the board's recording of the meeting is to ensure the creation of an accurate record of its proceedings. It is our understanding that the recording made by ACMi will be available on demand at acmi.tv within the coming days. Arlington Community Media is dedicated to providing an electronic forum for the free exchange of information and ideas which reflect the talent, skills, interests, concerns, and the diversity of the Arlington community. Please visit acmi.tv to learn how to support this valuable public resource. If anyone has comments or recommendations, please send them via email to zba@town.arlington.ma.us. That email address is also listed on the Zoning Board of Appeals website. And to conclude tonight's meeting, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Mr. Hanlon. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. LeBlanc. So roll call vote to adjourn. In the absence of Mr. Dupont, we have Mr. Hanlon,
Yes.
Mr. Holly,
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc,
Yes.
Mr. Bernowski,
Yes.
Mr. Rosenberg.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much. We'll be in touch. Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Evening all.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
night.